For most of your life, the message has probably sounded something like this: work hard, build a career, save money, and all so you can eventually retire. And when people talk about retirement, the picture is usually the same. Relax and slow down, spend more time with family, and maybe play some golf. But here's a question that doesn't get asked very often. What if retirement is actually the perfect time to start a small business? Not the kind of high-risk startup that puts all of your savings on the line, but maybe something built around experience and curiosity and freedom. In this episode, we're going to talk about why starting a business in retirement can actually make a lot of sense. I want to talk about the advantages people later in life have that young entrepreneurs just don't, and the guardrails you should put in place so it doesn't put all of your retirement at risk. Because sometimes the best time to build something is when you finally have the freedom to choose it. Hi, I'm Matt. I've spent over 25 years building companies as a serial entrepreneur. And now with Beyond BST, I help entrepreneurs and aspiring business owners navigate from their idea to first dollar and beyond. Let me know how I can help. And if you're approaching retirement or already there, would you ever consider starting a small business, or does the idea just sound exhausting? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to talk to you about it. There's a common assumption that entrepreneurship is a young person's game. The story we usually hear about is that 22-year-old founders launching a tech startup in their garage. And sure, young entrepreneurs can bring maybe more energy and definitely increase risk tolerance. But someone who's retired or in their 60s, you have a lot to offer too. The most valuable might be pattern recognition from knowledge you've built up over all those years of working. After 30 or 40 years in the workforce, you've seen things. You've seen businesses succeed and you've seen them fail. You've seen customers complain and you've helped solve their problems. You've watched industries changed and you've helped make that happen. And all of that experience builds pattern recognition. A young entrepreneur may have enthusiasm and energy, but someone a little older, they can look at a situation and say, I think I've seen something like this before, and I know how it usually plays out. Here's what's going to happen next, and here's how we can use it to our advantage. That perspective alone can prevent a lot of expensive mistakes. So let's talk about some real advantages to starting something later in life. These advantages tend to show up in three major ways: experience, relationships, and control over your time. So most people approaching retirement have spent decades building knowledge in an industry. You know how things work. You know what customers struggle with. You know where the inefficiencies exist. And those insights often lead directly to good business ideas. Over decades of work, you've likely built relationships and have an incredible network of professional contacts, not to mention a solid reputation built on trust. Those things can take young entrepreneurs years to develop. By retirement age, many people have fewer obligations than they did earlier in life. Their kids are grown, the major career pressure is gone. Some people have paid off homes or fewer financial responsibilities. That means a business can be built on your terms, not out of survival. And those three things, experience, relationships, and control over your time, they're all advantages most young entrepreneurs are still trying to build. But even with those advantages, there's still something important I think we need to talk about. Because starting a business in retirement should look very different than starting one at 25. The biggest rule is simple: protect the life you've already built. That usually means things like avoid risking your retirement savings, avoid taking on large debt, and avoid businesses that require massive capital investment. Maybe you want to avoid businesses that demand intense physical labor. This stage of life in your 50s and 60s isn't about making an all or nothing bet. It's about building something low risk and sustainable, something that keeps you engaged, generates some income, and fits the life you want to live, not something that creates unnecessary stress. Think of these as guardrails. They're the rules that protect the life you've already built while still giving you the freedom to explore something new. Businesses later in life don't all need to look the same. In fact, one of the advantages of retirement is that You can approach businesses very differently than someone who just needs income to survive. Now the question becomes, what kinds of businesses actually work well at this stage of life? One common path is using the knowledge you've built over decades. Things like consulting, advisory services, coaching or mentoring, bookkeeping, project consulting. You're monetizing the experience you already have. Sometimes retirement finally gives you the freedom to explore something you've always enjoyed. Maybe it's woodworking or photography, art and crafts, or specialty food products. These might start small and grow slowly, and that's perfectly fine, because the goal here isn't always to build some massive company. Sometimes the goal is just simply to build something you enjoy. There are things many people put off for decades because life gets busy, your career and kids and responsibility. Retirement can be the first time you finally have the freedom to explore them. Maybe you want to open a small shop. Maybe you want to start some kind of niche service, writing a book or launching an online store. Not because it has to succeed in order for you to put food on the table, because you finally have the time to try. Some businesses in your 60s and 50s are really about staying connected with people. Things like tutoring or small local services, seasonal work, or helping neighbors with projects. Sometimes the social interaction alone is incredibly valuable. The common thread in all of these ideas is simple. They're flexible, low risk, and built around things you already understand or enjoy. One of the most interesting things about business started later in life is that profit isn't always the driving force. In your 20s and maybe 30s, entrepreneurs need their businesses to succeed financially. They need the income, they need the growth, and they definitely need stability. But at retirement, business can be different. Sometimes the goals are staying mentally active, meeting people, exploring interests, generating just some supplemental income. Interestingly enough, not needing the business survive can actually be a strategic advantage. When your livelihood doesn't depend on squeezing every dollar out of the business, you can operate differently than everyone else. You can be much more selective about your customers. You can focus on work you actually enjoy, and you can grow slowly and sustainably. And customers, they're going to feel that difference, because businesses built from curiosity and experience, they're often going to feel more authentic than businesses built purely out of financial pressure. And one of the biggest advantages of starting a business in retirement, I think it has to be this. You're not trying to prove anything anymore. You're building something simply because you want to, and you can. I've seen this play out in a lot of different ways. I know someone who spent more than 30 years in manufacturing. He was ready to stop working full time, so he retired. But he wasn't ready to completely stop working. He also didn't want just any other full-time job. So he started doing small consulting projects for companies that needed help, solving very specific problems. He used his business contacts to get started, with just a few projects a year, a few phone calls, and maybe a little occasional travel. It wasn't about building a huge company of some kind. It was more about continuing to use the knowledge he had already spent decades developing. Another example I see a lot is people turning hobbies into small businesses. Your woodworking, photography, specialty baking, maybe handmade products. Sometimes these start with friends saying, these are cool, you should sell these. And before long, you've got maybe a small online shop running out of the garage, or you're setting up at craft shows and farmers markets. And sometimes it's as simple as someone saying, you know what? I just always wanted to try this. Retirement may be the first time you finally have the freedom, the disposable income, and most importantly, the time to explore some new ideas. For most of us, work is something we have to do. We have life responsibilities, the bills, the family, the pressure. That's why starting a business in retirement is different. Now it's something you get to choose. And when it's done carefully, with the right risk and realistic expectations and the guardrails in place, it can become one of the most fulfilling chapters of your life. So I think the real question becomes, what will you choose to build next? If you're still pre-revenue or thinking about starting something for the first time at any age, this channel is designed to help you think through those decisions that come before your first dollar to build the foundation for a successful company. And if this rings true for you, I'd really appreciate a like and a subscribe so I know to continue making videos that you want to see. Now, take a breath. You've got this. All right, what's next?